Well, there's no shortage of activity on the athletic director. If you're someone that studies it like me, there has been a lot of activity and a lot of updates. So I encourage you to go to higheredathletics.com, go to the D1 Athletic Director Hiring Trends Tracker, and you'll see what the updated date is updated as of July 31st. And I always update it. I update the stats, I update my spreadsheet, and try to give the most up-to-date information. Now, I'm going to go through as many of the openings as I can of athletic directors, if not all of them. And so this will probably be kind of lengthy, but I'll try to cut it up with the different schools. But there's 18 openings in Division One right now as of July 31st, and a lot of this has been shifted around by some movements. And when you have one sitting AD goes somewhere else, it's going to open things up. And we are right now sitting at three in the power schools. If you're counting Stanford, which we think it'll be soon, UC Berkeley, they have co-AD's name for 25-26 academic year, but they've got their eye out on what's the future. I'll have a comment about that. And then I've added Oklahoma. Now that they have their search committee formed, that obviously they have a longer runway with Castiglione still being there. Kind of taking the same approach, maybe more externally than what North Carolina did with internally of just announcing who they're going to hire. So those are our three in the power schools. Obviously, Georgia Tech closed, and Rutgers just closed theirs as well. Now, the FBS non-autonomy, you're looking at Delaware, New Mexico State. Both of these are really long hires. USF, another presidential kind of delay there. Troy with Brent Jones now leaving. Utah State, Diana Sabo leaving for Maryland to be the number two. So we're seeing this kind of trend of the number twos coming from the FBS non-autonomy speed up. We've got six in the FCS with Austin Peay State, Bucknell, Cal Poly, Gardner-Webb, South Carolina State, and Southern Utah. And then of the non-football D1 schools, three of them are from California. I think 6 of the 18 openings are from California across Division One. You've got CSU Northridge, UC Riverside, a new development of an athletic director leaving to be a senior staff in the SEC. UC San Diego, and we've got New Orleans. So that is where we're at as of recording. Halftime of the Hall of Fame. It is Hall of Fame game. It is officially NFL season, I guess. And a lot of activity around here. Losing my voice. I'm coaching my son's youth football team, and we had practice about an hour and a half ago. And I've got a noisy golden doodle laying on the guest bed here in my office to my right. And I've got another golden doodle at my feet, and I've got my 3-year-old toddler in his room above me. His room's right above there. He refuses to go to sleep. So a lot of activity here in the Smith house, but I wanted to get on here and still talk about this. So I want to get in here and start talking about some of this activity. Troy, I'm just going to start with what I put in my notes app. Everything I talk about is really as it happens, as I see the D1 ticker news or the college AD news. I just start putting it right here and for myself to just talk about later. So I'm just going to read through it. Don't have my glasses on, don't appreciate the glare on the video, and so I've got to keep this phone close to my face. All right, Troy, AD Brent Jones headed to be the Georgia Tech number 2. So the current chancellor at Troy hired and went from deputy AD to AD years ago, Brent Jones. I expect that the chancellor, who is still there, will do the same with current deputy AD Kyle George. So Kyle is basically in the exact same spot that Brent Jones was about 6 years ago. I think he was the deputy for 2 years. Then he became the athletic director. Kyle George has been there a while, and he's already been named the interim. And they did mention they're going to do a nationwide search. I would be shocked if this one is not. He's from, I think, Hoover, Alabama. And so, this clearly is a situation where your AD is leaving on good terms. They're having some of the best success they've had with fundraising and things that Brent's been doing. You're not going to probably just blow that up and take a risky hire if you think you already have someone that wants the job and can do the job. So I think you're going to probably see Troy eventually remove the interim title and change it to permanent. I think a leading sign is if they end up with a search firm. If they don't end up with a search firm, I don't think that they're gonna really need one. I think it's just gonna end up being Kyle George. Okay, Stanford. So Elevate is the search firm that they are using, and this is always interesting because of the Andrew Luck shadow. The president there is from the business school, and he approached Andrew Luck about this opportunity a long time ago. And I doubt he becomes the AD, Andrew Luck, but it would be curious how much his dad has kind of. I don't think people remember because they know Andrew Luck is a football player, but his dad, Oliver Luck, has been really ever since COVID and all this NIL change, he's been consulting with leagues, with schools, with presidents. He was an athletic director for a long time, an athletic administrator. And I just have a feeling that maybe part of that is in him. And I think people probably don't give Andrew enough credit for how much he knows other than just football. So that one is interesting. I do remember here in Indianapolis, Luck took a position in Indy and lived here whenever Andrew came here to be our Colts quarterback. Oliver was at the NCAA for a short time. And I think that people don't give Andrew Luck enough credit for what he lived through as the son of an athletic director. We don't talk about that as much, but it wouldn't be crazy to me if he just becomes the athletic director. And then they build up with traditional people around him. He's a Stanford person, through and through. His wife and him met at Stanford. He is a fan of multiple sports. I think he likes soccer almost as much as he likes football. And he's a very smart person. And he went back there after he retired early with the Colts. And I think he's a huge ambassador for what Stanford wants to be. Stanford wants to still be able to compete and not lose their brand of being like a lifetime decision instead of just a decision on the transfer portal. So I wouldn't be surprised if you also look at other people like an Ivy League AD step into the position, especially since Andrew Luck is the GM of football. That might kind of just allow someone that doesn't need major football experience to come in and just be the athletic director while you still have that academic pedigree and you can focus on these other sports. So I still don't know exactly what they're going to do, but I'm starting to think that since the president is a business background, that I thought they would bring in like a pro sports model AD or private business executive and then just, kind of do what Rutgers, I guess, wanted to do and just add or promote traditional college leaders. So that's going to be interesting. And I do think whoever becomes this has a very good chance of being a Stanford alum, whether it's Andrew Luck or someone else. I think you're looking at identity and understanding what it means to be Stanford. I could see them just making sure it's someone that has a Stanford degree. So that is one thing about Stanford. Cal Berkeley, co-ADs for 25-26. We talk about the Andrew Luck shadow. How about the Ron Rivera shadow? So there was speculation about who's going to be running things. And with this GM role, they were one of the first to jump in it. I think this co-AD is a good idea to see how that GM role kind of evolves and how it meshes with the AD role of the future. And this gives you two people that have been in the department for quite a while that can lead it. And that just is kind of interesting to me. The Chancellor, Rich Lyons, he is a Cal Berkeley alum, started in July 2024. Before that, he was the business school dean and focused on expanding innovation entrepreneurship at Cal. Other Cal alums are two sitting D1 ADs is Sac State's Mark Orr and Seattle's Shani Fink, who is a volleyball athlete there. So if it were me, I'd be trying to get Fink to try to come back and be the athletic director. So here's why. Seattle doesn't have football, so it could make that Ron Rivera experiment better and less messy. She has a BA in social science from UC Berkeley, brings instant credibility, competed as a volleyball athlete there, and then she spent almost her entire career in the state of California at the University of San Diego, not UC San Diego, but USD. So I think that my prediction there, I don't really have a prediction, but I'm just thinking of like what makes sense because you never know if it makes sense for the person that you think that you would recommend. But I mean, Shani Fink, if you can get her to go to Cal, I think that is a slam dunk for the chancellor there. If not, I doubt it's someone from the UC world. There's just not a lot of Cal people, but I think this will probably be a traditional athletic director uh, position. And if you can get a sitting AD, I think that's the way to go. South Florida. So this one is by CSA Search and Consulting. And the president search is probably delaying things. So their president search committee switched from the firm. They did have the firm that kind of had the failed search of the University of Florida. So I kind of wondered if that was going to cause them to switch to someone else. I don't know if that's the reason, but since they've gone to Korn Ferry, and then they have a meeting on August 6th to review input that they've received from the president's search from the community, and then that is going to help them create a profile for the position. So what that tells me is this is going to take a while. And there hasn't been a lot of movement. I mean, CSA went through a whole rebrand during the middle of this search. Obviously, they can, walk and chew gum at the same time, but I do kind of wonder if this is going to be a while. There's a lot of news coming out about USF and things that they're doing. Obviously, they've already been in a good spot. So it's not slowing down the athletic department, but it might slow down who the next athletic director is. I still think their best option is what I put in my prediction video of the Tampa sports area or commission leader. And we'll see. There's no indication of it being anyone internal. I don't think it would be. The thing about this is, I think the USF board, I did a lot of, it's one of the few schools that I did like a HEA briefing on. I have no doubt that this board is good enough and that they trust the outgoing president, who had also been a trustee before. They could make the probably the best athletic director hire possible. I think what they might be doing is knowing that they're not in a panic right now and the stadium's been approved and that's going to take a while. I think they're just trying to get it right with their president and then let the president come in and handle this. And let the Rutgers situation be kind of maybe a guide for some people that have this presidential delay, is because the president came in there and said, "Look, I'm going to give this. I tried to go the direction that was decided before me, excuse me, but he ended up saying basically like I had to take control and we had to hire someone, and he found someone." So I think it is, when you talk about alignment, I think you're just going to see an AD not be hired until the president's hired. And who knows, maybe CSA finds some good names and then USF, by the time you're watching this, comes up with an AD that we didn't see was coming. So who knows? Delaware, another thing. The president's search is likely delaying the AD search, especially since they've had an acting interim AD since February when Chrissy Raywalk left. And I doubt Raywalk comes back, but I do want to say she was one of my favorite guests on HEA a long time ago. She even mailed my kids Blue Hens shirts that they absolutely loved. One of the coolest mascots in college sports, although I think Hoosier the Bison will take the helm of that this year for IU. It does seem like the interim AD, Jordan Skolnick, has the best chances of just assuming to the position. He's been there since 2016, has a strong fundraising background. Once again, it's probably going to depend on who the president is. And it doesn't seem like they're in a rush to make this decision for the president or the AD. And then I will say one of my mentors, my favorite people in college athletics, is Maddie White. She is on staff there as the Executive Senior Associate AD for Sport Administration and Front Office. Someone I think is just would be an incredible athletic director. I think she could be an AD anywhere in the country. She would be great. She cares about student athletes. Nothing's going to happen that she hasn't seen and handled before. Was really good to me in my time at IU. I think if she wanted it, she has a good chance of getting it too. But I think she could go anywhere. But what I mean by this is they clearly have a capable interim leader, and they really have an all-star in Maddie White being there. So there is no rush. But it's another thing with this president search. I don't think I can overstate enough how much a president situation matters to the athletic director, especially moving forward with all the big decisions that have to be made. New Mexico State. They are finally doing a search in late June, expected to be completed by the end of the summer. Said they were hire a search firm and do the institutional committee approach. I've not seen anything yet on if they've selected a search firm and who it is. But Dr. Amber Burge has been in the position since January, and I expect to be a candidate for the permanent AD job. The president was actually quoted in January and said, in 6 months, I want to see where we're at. She owns the position right now. Now, I have no idea if Dr. Burge has won over the president during this time as acting AD, but I do wonder if the job was to get a firm foundation after several issues the department has obviously faced in the last few years. But now, is it time to find a revenue generator? And this, Dr. Burge doesn't have that apparently in the background, at least of what we can see. I would think they'd be looking at a sitting FCSAD that has experience rebuilding a struggling athletic department, just kind of get a better foundation under its feet. And I just think that that was interesting. And then we're going to talk about UC Irvine, but UC Irvine's current AD since 2019, Paula Smith, the only sitting AD that is a New Mexico State alum and is actually from the state. But I think she's just too far in her career and probably wouldn't even be looking to move at this point. And it wouldn't be a long-term solution for the president of New Mexico State. Now, the president did come in spring of 2025 after serving as the executive vice president of academic affairs and provost at Cincinnati. So this, if it's not Dr. Burge, does he bring an up-and-comer from UC to lead the Aggies? And I think the question is, would that person want to come? And we're starting to see if you can be a top two, top three at a power school, you're probably going to have opportunities of places that either you love and you want to be at that are good fits, or it's like, do I want to take on that type of effort that it's going to take to turn this around? And it comes down to the relationship with the president. I think this person was a provost and not the president at Cincinnati, so I don't think that is kind of like the relationship that you might see with, President Tate and Kelly Zinn when they're both at LSU, because he was the president, not the EVPA or executive vice president of academic affairs and provost. I don't think that relationship is the thing. So I don't think it's someone from Cincinnati. So my prediction is I do think it's just going to be Amber Burge. It seems like if you can just fix problems, that maybe this is just her position. So I do look for them to just do that. Now, the fact they're doing a search, we haven't heard a search firm, so who knows what they're doing with that. Utah State. I'm just curious how long Sandy Barber and Huron are going to help. They had one deputy AD on staff before that, but he's since left for a role as an NIL director for Oklahoma, and where he did both his degrees. There's only one current D1 AD that attended Utah State as a student, and that's Matt Billings, who was recently hired Portland State AD, I think like a year ago. So doubt that person leaves unless they're wanting to, but whoever takes this program and whenever it is, they're probably going to have to add a two and maybe a number three to help lead. The senior level staff there just seems to be very thin right now. And I'd probably once again look for an FCS AD similar to what Marshall just did by bringing in an FCS AD. Speaking of which, APSU, Austin Peay State, AD Gerald Harrison just left for Marshall. And I don't see an internal hire. Actually, would expect that one to two people, based on who is there with him, will probably go to Marshall. They do have a deputy AD of revenue generation that is an alum of APSU, but he's just so new to college athletics and in that role and just in college athletics that I don't think that would necessarily be AD candidate. They haven't named an interim yet, but it said that in the coming weeks we would hear more about the search and about an interim leader. And even identifying an interim leader will be interesting because of how young and new the whole department seems to be. So President Licari was the provost at Indiana State when I worked there years ago in my first stint there, and I really think that this interim will probably be a faculty member. I look at maybe the FAR, Dr. Jennifer Thayer, who is an APSU alum and a professor of accounting for the last 10 years. I really think that you're going to look at, I'm not saying it's an Illinois State type of situation, but as far as who the interim is, I could see an FAR kind of come into that role, and that might just be kind of a way to keep things going. There have been 26 FCS hires since January 2024, and 10 were internal promotions. Only 4 were sitting ADs. 16 came from FCS schools and 11 were deputy ADs. So I think I don't think it's going to happen, but if he wanted to be back in an AD, I think Sherrard Clinksales did great things at Indiana State. I think he didn't have the best situation with alignment there. And, I think that maybe that would be a great job for him if he wanted it to go to someone that you could go in there and he could really just keep things going. And I think that'd be a really good one. Another good option here would be to expand the search to include D2 athletic directors that have winning football programs in a similar size area or location. I was kind of looking up research of just, the Tennessee area and anywhere around there. Carson Newman of D2, Matt Pope, athletic director. I could see if that was one, if it was me, I'd be trying to see if he'd be interested in interviewing. Been at several different places. I think he's been at Carson Newman for 8 years now. So just an interesting name there. Bucknell, almost always seems like a mystery as to what happened and what the university is doing with this search. It is a private school, makes things a little easier. The news broke of Jermaine Truex's departure in March of 2025 and that Deputy AD Tim Pavleko is serving as the interim. No sitting athletic directors in my database have Bucknell ties. The president has been there since 2010 and had his contract extended through at least 2028. The interim AD has been there over 25 years, almost 15 as the deputy AD, and is an alum. I think all signs point to him probably being the AD permanently. No sign of a search firm. That's one of my indicators that maybe they're just doing this. Make sure, try it on, test drive, and then let's make this permanent. Cal Poly. This one's also a CSA search and consulting. Outgoing AD is retiring, but agreed to stay on until the successor is named. The senior VP of Administration and Finance is leading the committee, and who has been at Cal Poly for a year, and before that spent 14 years in university leadership at UCLA. They want an AD to start sometime in August, and it seems from a letter sent to the community by the president. Interesting thing here is the president, Armstrong, has been there since 2011, and that is just an incredibly long tenure for a college president right now, or ever maybe. And this can be seen as good or bad for a potential AD. And what I mean by that is you like the steady leadership, you like that, that means things are probably in a good situation. But you also know if you take this job, you're probably going to have a new president sometime in your tenure as AD because at some point, President Armstrong is going to retire. And, their senior leaders in athletics have been there for 10 to 25 years, but I suspect with the changing dynamic of athletics, they're probably going to look outside the institution for their next AD, especially given they didn't assign an interim and instead just asked the AD to delay retirement until a successor is named. That, in my opinion, just name one of them at the interim. Yes, it could mean they're both interested, but just based on looking at biographies and thinking about this, I have a feeling it's going to be an external person. So I assume they go with another FCS leader, but they probably won't be from California as there's only a few in the state. So look for maybe institutional peer. That's something I always try to look at. It'll be interesting to see what they do. Gardner-Webb, CSA Search and Consulting, did the last search in 2022 that led Andrew Goodrich this past May. He left for Akron, and so that's why this opening is there. Previous AD came out of retirement to serve as the interim AD. He was already AD Emeritus, Chuck Birch. I thought that was kind of cool. Bring in the retired AD. That's happened a couple of times right now. Gardner-Webb has an interim president, so once again, this might be a situation where Birch remains on until they find a president who then finds the AD. Seeing a lot of themes here of these openings, right, with some of these president searches. Myers McRae search firm is leading the president search. Don't know that they would also be involved in the athletic director search. I do think Gardner-Webb will take their time given the steady leadership, having their AD Emeritus, Chuck Birch, and the importance of getting the right person in this role after the president is determined. This is a religious affiliated school, Christian school. I think it's just something they're going to take really seriously. South Carolina State, SC State. Their previous AD served 1 year before parting ways, so they're back at the drawing board. The institution's president is a retired colonel in the U.S. Army, Alexander Conyers, an SC State alum. He has a master's degree from South Carolina and Troy University. And the institution is about to do its first ever capital campaign and $100 million in major construction and renovation. This does make me think you'll see someone with that type of background serve in this role to kind of help athletics pull its part. The interim athletic director is Buddy Peay. their former football head coach of 20 plus years. He will lead the national search for the next AD. So it doesn't sound like there is necessarily a search firm. This is also his second time where he's been asked to serve as the interim. So that gives you a little bit of confidence that things are going to still be rolling as we're here in August and football season's about to start. And this will be the eighth hire in the MEAC since 2020. Three of those came from D2 AD roles, including the previous SC State AD. Three of the seven that have been hired were internal hires. And then four of the ADs selected in the MEAC since 2020 had doctorate degrees. I noticed that when I was putting together my athletic director profile, it's not just the MEAC, HBCUs in general. A lot of the athletic directors have terminal degrees, and I thought that's awesome. There are a lot more people across the board in Division One that have not just we're also talking about JDs, yes, and EDDs, but there's just a lot of different type of doctorate degrees, and I think that's awesome. There are three Division II HBCU institutions in South Carolina. Claflin, Tony O'Neill was at Bethune-Cookman for 17 years before taking the Claflin job. There's Allen University. Philip Wallace Jr. has been the AD since August 2024. Several years of AD experience elsewhere. Was a basketball player at Savannah State, which joined the MEAC after he left, but assume he followed the program during their decade in D1 in the MEAC, so some conference familiarity. Has had success of a basketball head coach with over 400 wins. And then Benedict also is there, but their AD has strong ties to Benedict. And so I don't think that athletic director would consider leaving. Another name that might make sense with alum and work ties to SC State, and I might mess this up, Abiola Wilson Brigman, Associate AD for Business in the SWA at Alabama A&M. 10 plus years in a variety of on-campus roles at SC State. In addition to having a BS in business from SC State and an MBA in finance from nearby Claflin. Also held athletic positions at Edward Waters as the deputy AD, also served as interim, and then at Grambling State as an assistant AD. That is a name that I would not be surprised that might come back to SC State, someone that has, assuming wants to be there, and a lot of ties there. Southern Utah. Very interesting one. The former AD, Doug Knuth, resigned in June, citing family reasons. President Mindy Benson has been the president since 2021-2022, served 8 years at SUU before that, and is an alum of Southern Utah. Interesting that their interim AD is a retired judge, Tom Higbee, also a Southern Utah graduate. They do have the former San Jose State AD, Marie Tuit, on staff, hired by the previous AD. There was a serious situation at San Jose State that led to her departure. I have no understanding of that. Didn't look back at reporting or anything, but I do think her experience there might be helping the interim AD, the judge, lead the department. And if they did feel comfortable hiring her to be a deputy AD, would they make her the permanent AD? I don't think so. So what I think is reality going to happen is they already have some capable administrators with strong and long ties to the university. They've got Sean Speak since July 2003. He's currently the Senior Associate AD for Revenue Generation. And then the current Senior Associate AD for Development, Jeff Tukafu, a former Southern Utah football athlete. There's some two current D1 ADs that are alums. They won't be going anywhere, though. We're talking about James Madison's Matt Roan, and who had been there at Southern Utah, and then UConn's David Benedict. So my prediction is actually an interesting name. And it is the Deputy Commissioner of the Summit League, Mindy K. Larson. These are a lot of ties to an institution, covering a lot of bases. Former Hall of Famer, not former Hall of Famer, former women's basketball athlete, and is a member of the Hall of Fame, has her jersey retired, served as Associate AD for Student Services for 2 years earlier in her career. That seems like a lot, right? Well, that's just the beginning. Also served as recently as the alumni president, maybe still does. Served as interim president at Southern Utah in July of 2021 when former president Scott Wyatt left. One of my favorite presidents from the time. He used to do a podcast around the same time that I had this podcast, and we had talked before. So that's how I kind of got Southern Utah on my brain anyways. So I feel like I kind of know a little bit about this school between him and Michael Benson also being a president there. Served as a Southern Utah trustee up until recently, and then served on the presidential search committee for the Utah Board of Higher Education that led to the current president's hire. So, working in college athletics, former board member, served on the committee that for the state that hired your current president, and you've been in a you're a Hall of Famer. And so this whole thing is, do you want to go back to Utah, basically? So if she wants it, I read somewhere that she was a finalist the last time, but it just seems like why not? I mean, you're talking about alignment. I just think this could be an awesome hire. Not knowing any of these people's personalities, I'm just trying to put the puzzle pieces together. CSU Northridge. So the previous AD left abruptly after 2-ish years. President Arabeck has been the leader since January 2021. No current athletic directors in Division One have education ties to CSUN. Mary Beth Walker, a professor, is the acting athletic director. The job posting shows they are being assisted by the Pictor Group. Now, the Pictor Group is led almost entirely of females, 11 of 12 of their team members. Many are former successful athletic directors or administrators in college athletics. And then the CSUN president is the fourth straight female, and the chancellor is a female as well. So they have a president and a chancellor for the system. But the CSUN president, which is the kind of the campus leader, is the fact that they put on there the fourth straight female, and then with the Pictor Group coming in on this, I just think the next, whoever the leader is at CSU Northridge, I have a feeling it's going to be a female athletic director. So that'll be interesting. I don't have a name, but the leadership of the Pictor Group, I looked at the bios, is really impressive. So I don't see them come up with a lot of AD searches, so I thought that was kind of interesting. Now, New Orleans, this is probably one of the toughest financial situations of any of these openings, but it could scare people away from the job or really just keep New Orleans from making a long-term commitment for a while. Wouldn't be that surprised if the interim stays in that role for a long time, already has been. Interim's been in place in September, and so we're coming up on 11 months and no end in sight. He's a 30-plus year veteran of college athletics, been at New Orleans for over 5 years and almost 20 before that at Tulane. So very familiar with the area. Now, their opening is because Tim Duncan left in August 2024 to become the deputy AD at Memphis after 5 years as the AD. They have a small athletic administration team as it is, so really a kind of a skinny group there leading that department. There's been a lot of challenges. I mean, enrollment went from about 6,000 to just over 4,000 in the last year. Before Hurricane Katrina, they had about 17,000 students. The state legislators are trying to kind of save New Orleans, or at least improve the future. They're trying to move it from the University of Louisiana system to the LSU system, and they believe it'll help the financial situation. So maybe that will help them. Maybe once that becomes clear, that would help them get a permanent AD that feels comfortable taking the job. But there really seems to be no indication of a search firm or a hiring committee. There's simply too many things going on at UNO for the AD hire to be a priority. I'm rooting for the president, Kathy Johnson. I worked not alongside her, but I worked on the same floor as her at IU. She was formerly IUPUI, now IU Indianapolis. She was the provost type role there for a long time before she left for New Orleans. And next up, UC San Diego. Parker Executive Search is handling this one. Deputy AD Sarah Allard is an alum and former softball athlete, so that's someone I'm thinking. I think at this type of school where the AD is retiring, the rest of the staff seems to be staying there, try to go with the internal hire, because if it's not broke, don't fix it. That's what we did at University of Indianapolis, D2 school when I was there. We did that with coaching hires. We did that with athletic directors. Also, the chancellor has been in the role since 2012, so he might want to stay in-house for the selection. I think that helps the deputy AD. Now, I mentioned Shani Fink earlier, Seattle's AD, and could also be a name that makes sense for this, in my opinion, if she wanted to return to a UC school and in San Diego, where she served 17 years at the University of San Diego. Nothing in Parker's listed profile posting of the job really stuck out as something that they're looking for abnormally or too specific. Pretty much a generic of what you would think they'd be looking for. And that's not always the case. Sometimes you see some really good nuggets in there. UC Riverside. Wes Mallett is reportedly, well, I wrote this as reportedly, but he has since left to become a deputy AD type role as kind of the chief communications officer at South Carolina after serving as the UC Riverside AD for almost 5 years. Interesting timing because I thought it was odd to see like the day before this announcement, or maybe 2 days, that a 5 years later article on the athletic department's website about how West Mallet and the athletic department transformed athletics, and really it was talking about how they saved athletics because it was a real situation where they almost lost their whole athletic department. And it was almost written when I read it as like a goodbye message. And then I was like, oh, this is just like interesting, a 5 year recap. And then leave it to the chief communications officer to kind of put that out there. And I mean, I thought it was, I mean, it's well written and a great, I mean, they did save it. So that's kind of interesting. But the other thing, interesting part about this is it comes not long after Kim Wilcox retired after 12 years as the chancellor. And the new chancellor, S. Jack Hugh, started just this month in July, coming from the University of Georgia as senior VP and provost. Now he sees his current AD leave for the conference he just left, the SEC. But I think it's another thing where this isn't a president coming, it's a provost. And I don't know how, I mean, they're not usually on, like, they might be on the same cabinet with the athletic director at their previous school, but I don't know if that relationship is built up enough where maybe he convinces, someone that he knows to come there. Because I've looked at Georgia's athletic department site several times. They have a very much Georgia staff that people are not going to leave, and you're not going to get someone to go, I think, from Georgia, California for this. So I think it's going to be an interesting hire. No current ADs have student experience at UC Riverside. I think it's going to be a difficult job for someone. I do wonder if another person inside a UC school or possibly a D2, D3, which they do have some D2s there, but if they could come in and do more with less, because that is a buildup, and it's an interesting thing. So I think I covered everything here of what openings we have. The one I added was Oklahoma. I don't have notes on that necessarily. It's anybody's guess what they do. I think they'll still do a traditional athletic director. I think everybody just assumes it's going to be the Mississippi State athletic director. I'm not so sure. It seems like it's setting itself up for a why didn't Graham Neff go to Georgia Tech type of thing. You know, they just want to kind of go out on their own and build this thing and still love the place they were at or that they're from. So that'll be kind of one I have to look at later. But that is a very detailed look at my own notes of all these athletic director openings. Check out the hiring trends on my website. Once again, the final takeaways, Deputy AD remains the most reliable, but we're starting to see a pickup of athletic directors going to these power deputies. And then who replaces them at these FBS non-power schools? Who's going to come in and fill those roles? Females remain woefully underrepresented, but you did see Kelly Zen, and so maybe it's going to be a different thing. But I think that the theme that I keep seeing as I head into the dissertation phase of looking at these hires from the president perspective and the athletic director hiring trends, alignment really matters. It's not just a buzzword. If you see someone leave, you wonder, is it because their president's either leaving or they have a new president, a new chancellor, and maybe it's just time to go. And so that is an interesting thing that I think will always be an alignment question. So please, keep supporting the podcast, keep watching the videos if that's where you watch it. This is independently run. I just get on here and I talk. I appreciate all the positive feedback of me actually starting to share my thoughts instead of just interviewing people. We will still have interviews to do, but right now I've just really been trying to share with people that prove that I am studying the athletic director position. I'm not trying to be an athletic director. I'm just trying to study them. And these are some of the takeaways that I see these current jobs. We'll see how I do on the predictions. I did pretty well on what Marshall did, and I did really good on what Rutgers did, in my opinion. So please keep following along. Share this with administrators or researchers, anyone you think that might enjoy it.